Hello, I'm Francis Daehoon Lee. Welcome to the 2020 PEACEMOMO EarlyWinterCollege. And today my topic is to prevent fatal clashes in Northeast Asia. I'm going to divide my talk into four parts. First, recent development in Northeast Asia. Second, regional global nature of the arms race we are facing in the region. And the third, I'm going to argue for the need of agenda resetting for the peace building and for peace movement, etc., from Korea focus to regional conflict prevention. From Korea focus to regional conflict prevention. And number four, I'm going to propose several things for preventive actions for non-governmental and governmental agencies as well. Let me move on. I want to sketch out briefly what has happened, especially in 2022. I will start from South Korea. We had a new government, Yoon government, from May. This was a very dramatic conservative turn in politics from a previous five-year democratic governments. Now, this new government was very keen in promoting the so-called three-axis military strategy towards North Korea. I think I have to describe the three axes, what they are. The first one, for the first time in South Korean history, this government claimed that it has ability and willingness to do first strike against the DPRK. And second one, it promised to develop South Korea's own aerial missile defense system, along with the US one. And the third one is also very scary and dangerous, which is, in case of a threat, in case of an attack as well, South Korea will go for a massive, punitive retaliation on the part of DPRK. This is called three axis, and along with it, Yoon government very strongly emphasized that it will, by the extended deterrence strategy of the US, it will localize extended deterrence. It will pursue stronger alliance with the US and Japan. This means that nuclear and non-nuclear attack system will be installed in the region based on US-Japan ROK trilateral alliance. This has been postponed by previous democratic governments, but it's not being postponed anymore. And let me move then to ROK-US alliance. As you know, this is one of the strongest military alliances of the world, most expensive and most extensively exercised alliance. Now this year, unlike the previous 5 years, the joint exercise rose in the amount, in the expense, and in terms of antagonistic aggressive capability. The name was Ulji Freedom Shield exercise between US and ROK, and then there was Japan as well later. It's called the trilateral ballistic missile defense exercise. Then they added one more sea joint exercise between two countries, ROK-US, and they added another this week, which is air joint exercise. And these exercises include, let me highlight, these exercises include the so-called decapitation operation drill, which mobilizes the top special forces from the US directly into the Korean Peninsula. And the purpose of this operation is to go into the enemy terrain and remove the leadership of the enemy, in this case, DPRK. They opened this battle, a very dangerous battle this year, and it was a very large nuclear and non-nuclear weapons included, and Japan was in the full partnership. Now, in South Korea and in the US media, when DPRK fires a missile or artillery fires for their drills, all the media coverage will go for provocation, unprecedented provocation by DPRK. But how do you describe the ROK-US military exercises and ROK-Japan-US exercises, which mobilizes the most deadliest aircraft of the world and the most deadliest nuclear submarines and hundreds of fighter and bomber planes from the US, from Korea and Japan. And by the concept of the extended deterrence, these drills by US and Korea and Japan include nuclear and non-nuclear weapons system in full coordination. And I think we also have to note what has changed in Japan from this year. Japan has adopted a 5-year defense budget plan, which plans to double the current Japanese military budget, double by next year. It means every year for 5 years, Japan will increase its military budget by $61 billion per year, which will be about 4 times larger than South Korean military budget. This is unheard of, record-breaking military expense hike by Japan. And what do they plan to do? They plan to invest on high-tech missile technology, ballistic missiles, and artificial intelligence-based weapons system, and submarines, air force, and naval forces in full offensive capability. And the written objective of this plan by Japan is Japanese capability to destroy the enemy bases. What does it mean? No more defense force. It's a full-scale offensive force that Japan is trying to transform its forces in next 5 years. And as DPRK, we saw that they tested a record highest number of ballistic missiles, short-range missiles, and artillery drills this year. They tested more than 19 ballistic missiles this year. But when did it start? Did they behave this way during the past 5 years until last year? No, they did not. They came to negotiation tables. They signed up disarmament treaties. They signed up like 50% peace treaty with the leadership of South Korea and the US until the Hanoi 2019, until the summit between US and DPRK failed in 2019 in Hanoi. So let me take a note that DPRK didn't pursue its armament program in the past 5 years, just as they did this year. This year, it is also a dramatic change by DPRK. When peace negotiations fail, because due to hardliners like John Bolton from the US, then countries like DPRK will go back to its old armament course. So now, on top of that, when the South Korea and US were focusing on the largest military drills ever in the sea near Korean Peninsula, then DPRK, Pyongyang declares, this was on September 8th, Pyongyang declares that it has legal right to the first strike by nuclear weapons in case they are threatened, not just physically attacked. If the leadership of DPRK finds that the country is under serious threat, then it declared it has the right to do the first strike of nuclear weapons. What does it mean? By 8th of September, DPRK declared itself as a nuclear weapon state. What I'm trying to say is that we have a fundamentally new situation in the region. This is no more a conflict between North Korea and South Korea. This is no more a seesaw game, diplomatic seesaw game, look at me, listen to me, let's come to the table, no, I don't want, kind of negotiation between DPRK and the US. This is a regional conflict, and the arms race is in the region, not with a few countries. China is a big part. Russia is also a big part in Northeast Asia. So therefore, from these observations, I'd like to add that whenever we discuss the situations in Northeast Asia, we had too much obsession and too much focus on DPRK. Let me repeat. The situation in the region has fundamentally changed this year. We are facing a new situation. Just raise a simple question. Do you think the mobilization of the deadly military forces from the US, Japan, and South Korea together with so much budget in it and so much troops mobilization in it, is it just targeting DPRK? Or is it a response, militarized response in the region by this side against that side, which includes, of course, China, with the development of crisis over Taiwan Strait, and with the current war going on in Ukraine? I think the most rational response to this question is, no, the new developments this year was a regional response, was not targeting a particular country. So when these tensions are described in the framework of provocation by DPRK, South Korea's defensive responses to DPRK provocation, I think we are missing the point. And a little bit of knowledge from peace studies, especially conflict studies, will give us light on this matter. Because just the basics of conflict is never unilateral. Conflict is created and escalated and sometimes resolved mutually, not by one agency, not by unilateral. But this dominant discourse of DPRK provocation is one-way explanation. Then the cause and the process and the result lies on one actor. Now we have to shift this from our understanding of conflict studies. By definition, conflict is a situation of engagement by several parties, several actors, who had this unfortunate perception that the other party is incompatible with my party, and my party is incompatible with the other party. So conflict is a situation when two or more parties develop and act according to this perception of incompatibility. Then what is the basics of conflict transformation? We try to change the perception. We try to change the action by changing the idea of incompatibility into compatibility. And it has to be mutual. So let me highlight the best way of understanding what happens in the region of Northeast Asia this year is that we lacked the proper understanding of conflict, which has been regional and which has been multi-actor oriented. By understanding conflict in that way, I think we can go beyond the Korea focus, as if all the problems lie in the Korean peninsula and China, Japan, Russia, US had nothing to do with Korean issues. No, the conflict started from the ending point of the Second World War, when by the global politics, the country was divided into two, the region was divided into two blocks. And this two-block game or two-block power competition still continues. Let me restart from the basic definitions of conflict. Conflict is a mutual action. Whether it goes up or down, it has to be mutual. And from this idea, we have developed in the conflict and peace studies 3 ways of engaging in a conflict. One is peacemaking, which is to stop an ongoing conflict. The second is peacekeeping, just like the situation until last year in Korea, to prevent resumption of fighting again. And now the third part is very important, especially today, which is peace building. Peace building is an active and planned intervention to prevent recurrence of the conflict. How? By addressing the root causes of the violence and changing the society and the state so that they can work for peaceful conflict resolution in a continuous and in a comprehensive and in preventive processes. So therefore, we can take this idea of peace building to apply in the Northeast Asia region. When you say there is a problem, the problem is caused by 1 or 2 factors. But when you say there is a conflict, conflict is a problem caused by several parties involved. Then, if you want to change the problem, the nature of the problem, that is to change the conflict, then we have to plan to engage with several parties, not just DPRK alone. So this is a totally different paradigm, a totally different perspective. When you say we have a Korea issue or Korea problem or Korea peace is important, then there's a natural tendency, global tendency to focus on the problems of DPRK. But if we go back to the basics of our understanding of conflict and to understand this problem as a regional conflict with several parties involved, then our engagement should be multilateral, multidimensional, and multi-level, and multi-actoral. And that's the way forward for conflict transformation. So by definition, our conflict transformation should be building relationship among many parties and analyzing conflict of many parties and address root causes which are probably historical and political and global power relational. And then we need to plan for dialogue, talking, meeting people of multi-actors. Then we have to set up a governance system that should be also regional, not governance system targeting one single country, but a regional government system. And usually in the security sector, they call it regional security arrangement, which does not exist in Northeast Asia. So we should work for that. And who is we? We are the people. So therefore, the last part of conflict transformation is that we go for building peace capacity of people of different countries together, not just one single country. So I'd like to argue from these basic principles of conflict and peace studies that let diplomacy do the work for the prevention, for civic empowerment, and for multi-party arrangement for better security. So now I want to move to my proposal part. So from this way of reading the situation, new situation in the region, I think there is very serious need to change peace agenda altogether. Let me call it agenda resetting is necessary in the region. Number one proposal is to change from Korea focus to regional conflict prevention. What we need is not just peace in small piece of land. We need conflict prevention of major powers of the world altogether. Because Korea focus was too narrow, it's short-sighted, it doesn't address the root causes properly. And second proposal is that we need to reshape our understanding of today's warfare. 21st century warfare has changed. It's a comprehensive power contest, but the manifestation usually happens locally. Like the war in Ukraine is not a local war. It's a global war. All the major powers are involved. So let me say, we need to change this visually localized picture of war into a global power contest. And number three, my proposal is that we need prevention. Prevention should be number one agenda. Preventing armed clashes is the best way to prevent full-scale global war. So I think this is core of my proposal. If you are worried about war, then it's Northeast Asia. If the war breaks out, it'll be a full-scale global war. Then the prevention would be top priority, and prevention starts from preventing possible armed clashes. How do you prevent armed clashes? You reduce armament and military activities. To summarize my proposal of agenda resetting, I would say we should redefine the 21st century warfare, reconfigure global powers in the armed conflict, redefine peace movement of the new century, and refocus on China-US war plans and war contest. And from the past experience and studies, I think we can come up with very innovative and necessary preventive actions. So my last part is proposals for concrete preventive actions. Prevention of armed conflict starts with early warning. Early warning is to recognize mutuality of conflict. Conflict is created by you and me together, not just you. And early warning involves dissemination of information of the risk, imminent risk. Early warning includes monitoring an effective, widespread warning system. And early warning also includes to make society prepared for possible emergencies. So the first step of preventive action would be early warning, and there are other actions we can take. The second one I would like to propose is preventive diplomacy. Preventive diplomacy is basically talking, persuading, understanding, and negotiating. It can be on the governmental level, but also it can be promoted by civic actors like NGOs, peace movements, and it can also be regional, at the same time international. International bodies like UN, conflict transformation, peace-building bodies are very important in this area. And number three is to introduce mediation processes. Okay? Somebody has to be out there to stop and to negotiate a possible mediation process, unless everybody involved will just get a very narrow perspective and go on the fighting course. Mediation can also be done by government, but also by peace movement, civic organizations, and also by international bodies. Number four, I think the most important international organization like UN has sufficient programs and sufficient resources to intervene in Northeast Asia region right now. For example, on the list of UN peace-building programs, there is sending special envoys to conflict region. There is a regional conflict analysis mechanism, regional conflict monitoring mechanism, and reporting mechanism. And there is also a program called Rapid Deployable Mediation Process. These are all in the UN mechanisms, but has never been used in this region because of global power politics. So we should argue and we should plea for actually using these existing UN mechanisms to prevent armed conflict. And we have to remember that foremost Secretary General Kofi Annan proposed a global conflict prevention mechanism. It's called Global Partnership to Prevent Armed Conflict. It has regional bodies and it has UN coordination system. So let's use this to prevent conflict in our region. Of course, there's a UN-initiated early warning system. There is peace-building bodies which can intervene in the region. And UN also has social capacity building programs for people and NGOs. So let's use them. I think these are very vital preventive mechanisms and programs for the region. By studying this and by preparing in this way, I think NGOs and peace movements can also have similar programs, civic diplomacy for peace, sending civic envoys for mediation to talk to the governments, special peace envoys sent by peace movements. And we can also establish our own civic conflict preventive regional mechanisms. So NGOs can also set up a regional mechanism for conflict prevention, conflict analysis even. And NGOs can also set up a regional early warning mechanisms. So we can approach different parts of the society, different media, different universities and schools, education offices, and NGOs and enlightened individuals in the region to say that the situation has come to a very, very dangerous, critical moment because of this arms race. So therefore, this is agenda resetting with very concrete programs. So let me highlight again that there are program resources for agenda resetting. Agenda resetting means that to understand and address the problem as a regional conflict. We have program resources. Let's use them. Now, this is my last part. So I'd like to summarize that to approach Northeast Asia from conflict and peace perspective with Korea focus, I think kind of narrow down our perspectives and our understanding of very serious problems that has been building up for decades in the region. It was basically restart of superpower rivalry, China and the US, and this has been heightened to a critical point because of massive arms race by all major powers, and all major powers in the region are very rich. They are able to invest in military budget and armament and fighting better than any other countries in the world. So that's the situation, very dangerous, that has developed in the region, not because of DPRK. So please, now it's time to drop the discourse of provocation by one actor. It doesn't explain anything. It's a typical finger pointing in the process of conflict escalation. And everybody with common sense knows that we have to stop finger pointing to de-escalate the conflict. Provocation is the typical finger pointing politics and discourses that has ruined our proper understanding of the region. We have to change that discourse into mutual discourses of mutuality. The escalation is mutual, the accountability is mutual, the military buildup is mutual. It's because of you, I develop, because of you develop your weapons, because of me. Mutuality is the key way of resetting the regional situation. And all the peace movement and NGOs, let's start by proposing and advocating preventive actions, immediate preventive actions, and ultimately to set up a alternative regional security system. I hope this alternative regional security system will eventually come out in the region to sustain peace under the guiding concept of common security. Security common to every party in the region, including DPRK, including China, including US, including Japan and South Korea. Security guaranteed for everybody. Therefore, no enemy, fundamental enemy. That's the best security. That's the idea of common security, and I think that's how the peace in the region should go forward. Thank you.